We only had one spot, and here we are.
Here we are. There was another friend of yours who was in town.
Who was that friend?
His name's Jason Strauss. You're probably pretty familiar with him, but not familiar enough to get this slot, which was the 12:30 slot on Wednesday. He was able to make it, but I mean, everyone here can attest, he didn't get the spot. So I'm in the seat and Jason's not Jason. I'll listen to the voice notes later, but here we are. True story.
No, I want Jason on just to go through like his self-care.
Then you need 4 hours. You need 4 hours. You've opened his cabinet.
Oh, I literally love staying at his house just for the supplements.
The new things.
But they're not organized in a way that I feel like they're easily accessible. Like I don't even think he takes them.
No.
He just has them.
I've gone in there once with like a trash bag and just like took 400 of them
ones.
And he didn't even, he has no idea what's in there. I was just like, I wonder what these things are and if he would ever notice, and he never noticed.
I thought you were going to say you threw out the old ones.
I just wanted to see, what is he taking?
So he never noticed?
He never noticed. Because he's doing so. But to his credit, if I look like that at 50,
I mean,
I'd sign on the dotted line.
Everyone wants to know. So we have to go there. We will go there. This conversation has come up on so many episodes that I've done, but I've never dedicated one to this very important topic of technology, how it's affecting our children, adolescents, each and every one of us. And I mean, there's just so much to say about this. And I have so many questions with what you've built and what you've created. I'd love to understand more just about Pixel Health. And this is a personalized digital wellness plan, correct?
Exactly. So I think the way we thought about this was you're able to go to the doctor and get your blood pressure, and that tells you certain information about your health. There was no way for you to get a measure of your digital wellness. So how much is my technology use affecting my mental and physical health? So that's where we started, was how do we at least figure out how bad or how good is your technology use? That's where the baseline was we figured out a way to measure that. So we use measures that you're probably familiar with, like screen time, like when are you using, like steps, those types of things. But we also started asking questions which were more about how it was affecting your life. So for example, after you scroll, how do you feel about your body image? Those types of questions, which any mom with teen girls is dealing with today. So Pixel Health was really designed to not only measure your digital wellness, but to give you an accurate view as to what your biggest problem areas are. And then we created the solutions that were tailored for those specific problem areas.
Can you explain, because when we were talking about this, I mean, this was last year, because I didn't really understand what you were doing. And then what I was asking you all of these questions, and I was just enamored by the fact that you've first of all, like I don't want to say shocked that you're interested in this because you don't have children, but I think, like, to me, I'm like, what is it that interested you so much to go and co-found this company?
Yeah, so I think, I grew up in Park City, Utah, and that's just like the most amazing place to grow up in the world. I mean, I'm in the mountains doing stuff that you think of kids should be doing, which is running around, playing in streams, hiking, skiing, biking, fun childhood stuff. I mean, technology wasn't front and center yet. So YouTube wasn't a thing for me until I was probably 12, 13, 14, but it was never a central part of my experience growing up. Eventually, moved around the country, was in San Francisco for a few years, working at a finance job, and COVID hit. And when COVID hit, everyone remembers the day that they realized this was something really serious. This is something that is going to change everything for a long time. And I think one of the unexpected things that ended up happening right away was everyone sucked into their devices because we couldn't be with each other. And so we started spending a lot of time on our devices. COVID was a weird time for everyone. For me, it also came with other things. So I lost my mother in that period, and not due to COVID, but during COVID period. And that was just difficult for a number of reasons. I started to figure out different ways to cope with that. And one of the ways which a lot of people utilize is therapy. And I started going to therapy. It was valuable. I started to get, it's an important part of the story, is the only reason I wanted to go into this. And at some point during therapy, I realized it's helpful, but it's missing something. And when I lived in San Francisco, I lived with my now co-founder, Solomon. And Solomon had lost his father. And both of us had bonded over that. And both of us were in therapy and treatment. And both of us felt like our treatment was missing something. And what we realized was neither of our therapists had asked us about our technology use. And we started doing our own digging and research, calling different places, different research centers, different groups around the world. And what we realized was the evidence, especially in other parts of the world, they were studying this much more than in the US, and they were protecting their kids much more than they were in the US. And we felt like there was this gap between what are kids experiencing today and what does the treatment look like and the protection look like for kids. It was totally mismatched. And I felt like if my therapist or clinician or whoever you're working with might have said to me, how much you're using social media? If you're using 8 hours a day, there's probably something we should look at here. And what are you seeing when you open social media? How are you feeling when you close it or when it's open? I think that's what drew me into this, which was I was using a coping strategy for loss and for other things that were happening, loneliness during COVID, that wasn't the appropriate way to deal with things. And it felt like no one had the knowledge, at least in the United States, on how to deal with this.
Did you throw yourself into social media? Like, did you find that it was your escape?
Yes, in that in the short term, when we feel lonely or we feel like can't connect with people, that's the first place, at least that I went. And I think a lot of kids go and a lot of people go because you're getting the short term feeling of relief. It's the same reason why people might smoke a cigarette or might have a drink. It feels like it's something that helps you in the moment, but after the fact, it hurts you. And that's if you're using it for that purpose. I think there are good purposes that we can speak about, and your platform is one example of that. But I think if you're not really intentional about your use, there are poor consequences and negative externalities that can come from that.
I know. I was having this conversation with another parent this weekend in the park about it, and it's so scary. Like, just like when you read the stats and really dive into the data on the rise in suicide across all age groups. And even like when you look at Pixel Health and you go through just like the percentages of children who are unhappy in their lives and they feel just like this emptiness from this overuse. And I have two young, small kids, right? I mean,
they're great kids.
Thank you. You know my kids, and they're into all the things. They know about everything. They also have two parents who are public figures, who are on all of these apps. And then on the flip, I'm like, what the hell do I do? Because my son is already coming home talking about his friends who have their own YouTube channels, and he wants YouTube channels, and he's obsessed with YouTube to the point where we took it off, but it's back.
Right.
Like, what?
How did this happen?
Yeah. And the other night, him and his friend were like watching TV. And then I go in the room and they're watching YouTube. They put it on I'm like, oh my God. Like, I mean, I am terrified. And I read all these things and I listen to all these child psychologists. But I think when you're like really in it, it's such a battle.
Such a battle.
Because your kids also feel like they're the ones left out when they're not the one with a phone in their hand or on certain apps at the age of 8.
Right. And I think what's so difficult about this, and your example is perfect in that they know more than the parents do. So parents are fearful also because they don't understand. So when your child is putting YouTube on the TV and watching things that you have no clue about, this is so far from the experience that people grew up with TV, where we all sat around a TV and, whether it was everyone was watching American Bandstand or whatever it was, that was a communal experience. Everyone was having the same experience. But parents today don't understand what kids are seeing. And so I think that lack of understanding is so scary. And because kids are so advanced, because we're handing them iPads, phones at 2, 3 years old, they just know so much more. And so technology is sort of this democracy where it's like everyone's on the same plane again. Which I think is what's so scary for parents. There's no like, go to your room here, because they're going to find a way
I know.
around.
I have to hide. I had to take their iPads away for the week. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people, especially parents, have very strong opinions around technology use. And listen, like, this is not to shame anyone who's given their child a device. Like, I understand. Like, I don't know. I have friends who have divorced parents, and I don't know what is right and what is wrong. And I think when I ran into you on the street, and I think just the conversations I've had about what you're creating, it's so important to make this the main topic of conversation. And not just, I feel like it's always brushed over and like, we're all like, okay, what do we do? And we don't know. And we move on. Right. But I have to hide their iPads during the week because I was finding that it was just making them, the lack of focus.
Withdrawn, kind of. Yeah.
Forget, they don't even hear their name. You could literally be like, there's a fire. And they don't.
They're in a different world.
They're in a different world. It's the same thing when I'm in scrolling or editing something. Like, no one knows. He's like, you are so gone. And I know that, right? And of course, I'm not going to sit here and say my kids haven't seen that. That would be lying.
Right.
I really try my best, but like, it's not perfect.
It's not perfect.
It's often sometimes, I'm going to keep it 100 because it doesn't help anyone to hear that, like, we're shielding it and we're so mindful and don't have our phones out. Bullshit. Right?
Yeah. We should just call a spade a spade.
Exactly.
And I think, to that point, the parents that are willing to have that open dialogue with their kids are the ones that are going to be successful in navigating this. Because, like you said, if you're pretending that you may not have a problem yourself, kids are really powerful modelers. So monkey see, monkey do is really accurate for kids. And modeling is one of the most important things in terms of what they see, they think is appropriate, right? So if you're trying to have a serious conversation with your kid, but every minute
you're on your phone.
Right. And they see that. And they're much smarter than you realize. They notice that even from age 3, 4, 5, they can see where your attention is. And so I think even just starting with the open dialogue, which as a family, we're trying to figure this out, and coming from it from a point of empathy, as opposed to from a point of judgment, like, don't do this, don't do that. Because that's when they shut off and withdraw into the digital world, which I think is not so productive.
Right, because they feel like they want to escape into just the life that they want to create. Like, Benjamin keeps saying things like that to me, like, I can't wait to do the things I want to do when I want to do it. And I'm like, I can't imagine.
Right.
Like, it's hard being told what to do the majority of the day, right? Like, you think about it. You're literally telling your kids to do things all day long. Like, it's
go to practice, go to school,
put your shoes on, put your socks on. It's time to go. Right. Like, put your plate away. It's a lot. And I know that they find their own escape in whatever it is. Like, for him, it's sports. It's all the sports related stuff. And he loves sports. So it's like finding that balance of, okay, on the weekend, do I give him these increments of time, right? Like the time blocking. And that is something I know you've implemented into the system that you've created.
Yeah.
So can you explain it more? Because you've also said that you guys are going into schools.
Yeah.
We need to crack this open. And
a lot of people love to talk about the problem,
everywhere.
But not a lot of people like to talk about the solution, which is a big part of why we started what we did, because we felt like everyone was panicking, but no one was handing out the tourniquets. No one was handing out the things to fix the issue. And so when we thought about how do we even start to think about or deal with something like this, when we were speaking to kids, we realized they were super curious to learn about all of these topics. They were curious to learn that social media companies made money when you spent more time on their apps. They were curious to understand the rules of the game, the dynamics of different technologies, of different devices, phones, tablets. They liked to engage and talk about it, and they weren't naive about all of it. And so what we created was, the first step was, as I mentioned, a measurement tool that's able to measure how bad each child's issue is or each family's issue. And the second is actual interventions, which when I say interventions, I mean specific activities that you can run either in your household or in schools or at organizations that are targeted to help you change your behavior with technology. And so what we found is not everything's applicable to everyone, but we'll give an example of a teenage girl who's struggling with body image issues on their phone. With a doctor out of Michigan, we created what we call a filtered images study, which we ran in clinical trials, which basically said that if you were able to identify what images are filtered online, you're more likely to have a more positive self-body image. And so even creating that open dialogue of, hey, with your child, do you understand that 86% of images on Instagram are filtered? Do you understand how to spot when they're likely filtered? And then when you're scrolling, can you keep that in mind that they are probably filtered? That type of conversation with your child is everything, because all of a sudden you've created trust. You've come from a point of empathy saying, I understand what you're going through. I understand what you're seeing, and I'm trying to learn too. And third, you've actually given them a real strategy. So Pixel Health has created tons of these strategies, whether it's for body image, whether it's for understanding what algorithms do, whether it's for understanding cyberbullying. All of these things have been incorporated into our program. We're now live in schools across the country. We're in 10 states serving thousands of kids. We've got tens of thousands on the wait list for next school year. We're also serving households. We've also now launched therapy. So, and I'll get into that as well, because there's a lot of kids that have fallen through the cracks that have, frankly, a prevention tool is not enough for.
It's the open dialogue that it helps enhance that connection with your child. Like, I mean, I have it with Benjamin and Eleanor, and I mean, Noah and I have talked about many times, like, should we just stop sharing them all together? I mean, it's so, it's such like a double-edged sword, right? Like, when I started in this space, I never imagined that I would be where I am now, or like the eyes that I have on me would ever be to this magnitude. It was like I had little kids, and I was so tapped into my joy, and they were just an essential part of that. So it always just felt like such an authentic, organic thing to share my family. And then everything changed.
You remember that moment when it changed?
Yes, vividly. It was just like walking out on the street, and step after step, people coming up to me when I'm with the kids and saying hi, and it's normal, right? But it was new for me. And it was definitely a moment of like, oh, this is so different. And listen, I've had people say very strongly, like, stop sharing your kids. And I go back and forth with it. I don't know. I don't know like what I'm doing, if it's right or wrong. I talk to them about it. Benjamin will say to me, like, don't take a picture. And I'm like, of course I would never. Like, if you don't want me to, I will not. I asked them actually the other weekend, I said, I've been thinking about just completely, stop sharing you on my social media altogether. And they were both like, no, we like it. Like, we like when people come up to you and say like such nice things, and like they know us, and it's weird. It is weird. And weird. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, it's a little odd.
It's
right?
Not the experience every kid is having.
No. And I don't know. I mean, who knows? I've drastically pulled back. I share things very differently. I'm super mindful. I try not to share things in real time, but it's a real internal battle, right? Because they're also growing up in the world of social media. So it's like, it's a part of their growing up where it wasn't for us.
Interesting. And I'm probably Yeah, I mean, it's really changed a lot. I talk a lot about with my co-founder how, you used to just have your peer friends. They were just the ones that were around you in your classroom. You had your 5 or 6 friends, and it was the people you did stuff with. And those were the people that you might have compared yourself to, for example, grades or who they were dating or those sort of things. It was just like my peer group. These were the people I had to worry about, and that was it. It's a lot different now. You have people in the Midwest that are comparing themselves to the Kardashians on a 24-hour basis and to Mr. Beast and to all these people who are amazing people and doing amazing things. But that weighs on people a lot, I think. And so I think that's hard. That's a different reality. And that spotlight that's on few is exposed to many. And I think that's really difficult for kids to deal with today.
It is. And I mean, it's difficult, like for me, like there are many times when you see things maybe you weren't invited to, or you weren't picked to do this thing. And it's like, I mean, I have those moments and I have to just check myself. Like thankfully I have the tools, right? Where I'm like, okay, I see that this just created a rise in me and I'm annoyed and think it immediately goes into your belief system that you're not enough. Like you weren't picked for that thing, right? Which I can't imagine how many people in the world feel that on the daily,
right?
On the like minute by minute, right? And seeing what everybody has. It's like clothing, makeup, homes, like cars, like trips. You're just like, it's so swallowing.
It's swallowing.
It is.
It's a great word for it.
It is. And I feel that way. I feel that way often. And so the thing that I've found really helps is like reducing the time spent, the time on the scroll. And it doesn't mean that I don't like support people I love, support friends and like and comment, things that we all know are important in the age of social media. Engaging is, I think, a key element of supporting.
100%.
But reducing the time spent, it's completely changed. In the past month, I've cut the time in half and I feel so much more engaged with what's in front of me.
The 2 things you said there that are really important. The first is all the data supports what you're saying, which basically says that moderate users of social media are just as well off as non-users of social media in terms of their mental health. So at moderate use, you're not actually doing harm to yourself, most likely. When you start to get into extreme use, 8, 9, 10 hours a day, the rates of depression, anxiety, OCD, eating disorders spike incredibly quickly. And so the moderate use is something that's really important. The second thing that's, I think, really, really, really important here is it's not all created equal, content and what you're engaging with. And I think we think about it like a diet. So if you have 2 people that are both eating 2,000 calories, it doesn't tell you very much. It just tells you they're both eating 2,000 calories. One could be eating a bag of Tootsie Rolls and the other could be eating, a well-balanced diet. And so when we think about comparing those 2 people, it's really about meaningful use. And you talked about engaging with friends. You talked about supporting people, calling friends, texting friends. All of those are positives.
Voice notes to my community. I love sending a voice note.
Listening to voice notes. Like those are positive things. And those make you feel good when you're doing them. Whereas the other things where you're sitting in your bed, I guess TikTok people call it bed rotting, and you're just...
I know. Can we stop, please?
So
it
bad.
Is not something to brag about.
It's exactly right. And people brag about it. There's communities that are built around bed rotting. And we see that kind of stuff and we're like, that doesn't make sense. It's your content that should be pushed to the top. It's not bed rotting that should be pushed to the top. It's how can I move my body and feel good today? How
can I get out of this funk and this mood? And even it makes me think of just the glamorizing of hangovers and all, I feel
These
like
are
that
role models.
That's
right?
the stuff that you if you go on TikTok,
that's right?
I mean, I definitely will say that I haven't cracked the code there. It's a different animal.
Yeah.
I enjoy some elements of it, but I think it is the thing that can really suck you in like a vortex. And I'm like, why am I watching this?
And they've built their algorithms, all the social media companies around that. It's called algorithmic radicalization, where basically you start by looking at a picture or a video of a dog, and all of a sudden you're watching war within 30 seconds. And that all happened because they just gave you a little more to keep your attention, just a little more. It's like eating a bag of Cheetos. It's like, I had one, it wasn't quite enough. I had another, it wasn't quite enough. And they lead you down this hole. And all of a sudden you're so deep, you don't know where you started. You don't know what time it is. You don't know how long you've been there. And that's a scary thing. I mean, that doesn't happen with other types of content. Like, you never watch a movie and think, I need to watch another one right now.
Right.
You're satiated. You're like, there was a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it was appropriate. Like, that was what I came to do. With this, when you're doing stuff like just doom scrolling, it's so unintentional that I think that intentionality layer is really everything.
This is the thing that we need to bring to the forefront of the conversation in schools, in homes, in communities. Like, I think this needs to be a subject that kids are taught in school. Like, it can take, it hasn't already taken over the world, but I feel like there's a lot of people who are waking up to the fact of the increase and rise of just negativity around it and what it can do to damage the world of these children. They're so small. So small.
I mean, you mentioned some of the figures, which are scary. You have a third of girls seriously considering suicide within the past year. You have 56% of them which are experiencing constant feelings of hopelessness, which these numbers are up so much. That's up from 36% just 10 years ago. Suicide thoughts up from 19% to 30% only in 10 years. And when you look at the data, and Jonathan Haidt, who now has a best-selling book, The Anxious Generation, New York Times bestseller, has done an amazing job in accelerating this conversation, because he shows that basically anytime you saw a proliferation of social media or of devices, smartphones, tablets, etc., you see an increase in all of those disorders. And so while a lot of scientists and researchers have argued, are these the cause? Are they not the cause? I think we're at the point now in society where we can agree that if it's not the cause, it's one of the major drivers of what's going on with kids today. And so, I think it's just important that we start implementing solutions and not just saying, this is an issue, I hope something happens. And I think that's where we came at it from, which is, how can we close the gap? I think that's really important.
It's incredible. I'm like, it's really something to share as far and as wide as we possibly can. I definitely feel like I need to understand more. When you say that because it's personalized digital wellness, is it personalized through like an application? I think just to really break down and understand more of how you're solving for
of course,
these problems.
So we've created, for schools, for example, which you mentioned, we've created entire pieces of curricula around these topics. And it allows teachers within 15 minutes to learn how to deliver multiple hours of content on these topics. So speaking to their classrooms, it's usually delivered in health class or an advisory class where they speak about these problems. And when we speak to these schools, they're like, this is the number one subject that kids care about and that they're engaged with. These kids are not going on their laptops and being distracted when they're discussing pixel health. They're engaged, to the 10th degree, because this is something that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. They know it's a problem for them and they want to learn how to do it better. And so the first thing that we've done is actually create curricula that's very easy for schools to implement. And we're now, it's very nonpartisan and we've been very careful to be apolitical. So we can be in states like Florida, California, New York, Texas. We wanted to be able to hit everyone and be able to help everyone. And so it wasn't a matter of pushing a certain agenda. So that's our school-based program. We also, as you mentioned, parents are really mystified by this. And so we've created all of these resources for parents to have very specific targeted conversations based on the issues they're having. So they can log into our portal. Kids can take our assessments to get what we call kind of the blood pressure for digital wellness. And then based on those results, we give parents resources to actually solve the problem in their own home. there's some really cool things that we've seen from that type of program. I'll give you a small fun example. The other day, we're speaking with one of our clinicians, and one of the results was coming out that the kid was very angry to the point where he was punching holes through the wall. And, that part was really discovered in the clinical setting, but it seemed like from the results, he was clearly struggling with something. And when we spoke with the parents had said that they felt like their child was addicted to gaming, that he won't leave his room and you can't pull him off the game. And when we brought the conversation together with the child and the family, what the child explained to us was that every night at 6:30, he has a group of friends and they all play World of Warcraft and they go complete quests, and they're all online at the same time. And it's important that they all complete these quests together. Every night at 6:45, their parents would call down and say, it's time for dinner. And he was just so upset that he was being pulled away. He explained it to us like, you're trying to pull me out of the third quarter of a basketball game. Like, this is something that his parents just couldn't wrap their head around. And when we finally opened that dialogue as to why is your child punching a hole through the wall? Why is he so upset? It's because the parents just didn't see him. They didn't see and understand the community that he had made online. And some of these communities are positive. And for him, he was engaging actually with his classmates, but in an online setting. And so what we're able to do is, when you can see kind of the track of this program, we're able to assess the problem. We're able to say, the problem is here. We then can give materials to actually open up the conversation between that family. And then we change. So now dinner's not at 6:45, dinner's at 7. There was a compromise there. The game is now at 6 p.m. So has the full time to do what he needs to do. And there's no anger anymore. And they don't feel like their child is addicted to gaming at this point. And we use that word, it's a serious word, so it's not applicable to everyone. And for this family, they were able to find a solution by opening the dialogue through our program. And I think those are the type of stories that we hear. And we're like, that's amazing, because this child didn't need serious care. We just had to figure out the root of the issue and tease it out. And that doesn't happen if you're not asking these honest questions in your assessments and you don't have the tools to open the dialogue. And so that's the kind of stuff we do in households. And it's just really exciting when you hear a story like that.
It's so simple.
It's simple.
Right? But I think as parents, sometimes it's like, no, this is it. Like, this is the time. And I think that's where I'm in this area, like this gray area right now, where it's like, to me, it's like wanting to express creativity, right? Like, but their way of wanting to express is possibly having their own YouTube channel,
right,
or going on watching these, sports clips on FaceTime with your friends, like on your iPad. Like, so it is that's where I'm like, I don't want to just shut them out because they're trying to tell me things they're interested in. But knowing the things that I know, like, I think that's where it sounds like I need an assessment.
You need an assessment. We need to check her digital wellness score.
Yes.
I actually feel like you might have a better one than you think.
I think I do.
Yeah, I do too. It's just from what we've spoken about, I feel like you're pretty intentional. Like, when you're going there, you know what you're doing. And I don't feel like you're wasting a lot of your time when you're going there.
I have moments for sure, but overall, I would say that I've really strengthened my ability to recognize, because it's a mood shift, right? I mean, I find the mornings, like if I stay out later and I wake up a little bit later and I like don't do the morning routine, right? And it's like I grab for my phone. I find that I'm on social media way faster than I ever would be if I meditated first. Right. And it's so crazy because today I had this, the kids both woke me up. I really try to wake up before them and meditate so that I can feel much more balanced throughout, like managing everything throughout the day. And I think a lot of the reason why we resort to our phones, it's exactly like you said, it's a form of escapism. Like, I'm just like, oh, like, God, just let me,
too much.
Let me just disappear and throw myself into something. And today I was like, no, like, do a deep meditation. I could just feel it the second the kids left. I sat and I did this really deep meditation. And then I felt this, like I was like, I need to talk about the power of meditation. Like why we do this before we go towards that quick hit and that quick fix. So crazy that like it happened literally this morning.
It's crazy.
I know, but it was very much about, it's around these habits that we attach ourselves to because we're struggling.
We're struggling.
We're not fulfilled.
No. And you know where that comes from. I mean, we basically traded serotonin for dopamine in all of this. So what social media gives us, what cigarettes or alcohol would give us is a short-term hit of dopamine. Long-term satisfaction comes from friendships, from conversations, from family, from connection. And we can easily mistake those in our head when we're not paying attention. But chemically, they're very different. Our brain's responding completely differently. And so if we're not careful about making that trade-off, I think the consequences are really severe. And so when I think about, how do you use and how should you use, it's in any way to connect and not to disconnect. And your brain chemicals will tell you the same thing, in that you're not aware, you think you're experiencing joy, but really it's just a short-term desire as opposed to a long-term fulfillment, which I think is tough. And, meditation is a great way to set an intention for a day, where if the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is go on your phone, I think it's pretty toast at that point, at least for me.
It's a hamster wheel. You're so sucked in for the day.
Gone.
On the toilet, who doesn't sit on the toilet and scroll?
When's the last time you did? I mean, it's crazy.
That's been one thing. I'm like, do not, I did it yesterday. I'm not going to lie, but I'm like, don't bring your phone. Like, no, I am sorry.
I'm not addicted to this thing.
No, that is a no.
It's not an appendage. I don't need this thing all the time.
Right. But people literally have it glued to their hand.
It's wild. And I mean, even those little things though make a big difference. Like, I'm going to leave it in the other room.
Yes.
That's huge.
It's huge. That's what I wanted to ask you. Just like little tips to help. I mean, I think the biggest, to me, like one of the greatest ones of all is cultivating a practice of meditation. It doesn't have, I feel like a mindfulness practice. Like I don't love always even saying the word meditation because I think people are very intimidated by it. And I feel like my mission in this world is to simplify these practices of meditation and movement, and to show that it doesn't have to be this crazy, grueling process. And it can be implemented into these micro moments into your day, where instead of maybe scrolling for what you think is 15 minutes, which turns into 45 minutes and you don't get your workout in. Right. It's to maybe while you're doing your makeup, listen to like a mindful moment, a breath work, just
sit in silence.
Something. Right. People are very afraid to do that.
Very scared. I think some of the easy ones, and this is not just for kids, this is something that I've implemented in my life and it's made a huge difference, is to buy an alarm clock. So buy an alarm clock and put your phone in the other room when you sleep. The amount of improvement in your sleep, you'll be shocked. It's not just the blue light. It's it's there. You could interact with it. You wake up at 3 a.m.
People scroll in the middle of the night.
You have 1 in 5 kids using TikTok between the hours of 1 a.m. and 5 a.m., which is scary. So if I'm a parent today, that would be my first thing I would do, is take the phone out of the bedroom. I think that's such an easy one to do. And I think if you start with that open dialogue as to why, there won't be as many tantrums and fits about it. And you can always revisit what we call kind of these like family contracts around device use. But I think that's such an easy, important one, which is just because sleep dominoes into so many other things.
Sleep has to be the most important thing.
And you have kids showing up to school that are tired because they've been spending all night scrolling. Right.
And then like adults, I think this is the same exact thing for adults. Like keeping the phone in the other, I put it on my dresser, which I have to get out of bed. I keep it.
There's some barrier.
Right. Like I keep it far away from me. By the way, that I am going to buy an alarm clock. You're right. I do need to buy an alarm clock.
I'll send you one, $8 on Amazon. I'll send you the best one they have. That way you don't even have to get yourself an alarm
like
clock.
Something people don't really use anymore because of our phones.
Right.
But I set an alarm on my phone, but I put it on airplane mode, do not disturb.
That's good.
Yes, I do all of the things. And the reason why I set it away from me is because I have to get up out of bed so that I don't hit snooze. That's just a little tip to actually
get out of bed,
get up and do it, because you do have that moment of like, I'm up, like just do it.
I'm already here.
Go.
My feet are on the ground.
Yes.
There's no going back at this point.
There's no going back. Wait, I don't know if you know about this, but Tom, can you hand me my phone for a second? I want to show something.
We're doing a good job of separation. It's all the way over there.
Yes.
That's
See,
pretty good.
You have
So
to separate
mine.
it. Okay. So my therapist taught me this, and I do this during the day so that I avoid scrolling.
Okay.
Oh God. Come on.
You're trying to buy something now. Wait.
Did you know this?
Can you bring me my phone right there as well, please, Tom? I want to show Melissa something.
People don't know about this.
It's such an easy trick. And all of a sudden, mine actually is set slightly differently, but it goes.
Oh wow!
It goes like dark red, but it's the same principle where you lose all the color interactions, which is what draws you to click on everything.
That's what is stimulating, right?
Exactly.
It's like the colors. So if you go on your phone when it's black and white, or with this like almost like red hue, you are not interested
at all.
I barely touch my phone when I'm here. I mean, obviously I'm working, but I mean, I know people who are working on meetings, scrolling, like on Zoom. You can tell.
It's just there. And now it's just a task machine. It's like a bicycle now. It's just like I use it when I need to get somewhere.
Exactly.
It's not, I use it when I'm bored. Big difference.
Which is why
I'll give you this back because it's too close. She can keep hers if she wants.
No. Which is why I needed to have you here to really dive into this. It's so important, this conversation.
It's so important. I mean, I think about, we know as humans what makes us happy. Like, it's not super complicated. And, you look at for example, the world's longest happiness study started in the 1930s, Harvard University. They've tracked people from when they were born then to now, and they followed a very large group of people. And they found that the number one indicator of happiness, more than career, more than money, more than everything else, was the quality of their relationships. And they found the quality of the relationships was number one. They found that loneliness and feeling lonely was toxic. And they found that you could develop real friendships at any point in your life. And I think those three sentiments are so important. And I think that's why this conversation is so important, because people feel like that's a substitute for real relationships when it's not. It augments. It's nice as an addition to continue to connect with, but it's not a substitute. I mean, we're very social animals, and doing this is what we're programmed to do well and what feeds what we need to be happy. But that doesn't. And I think when we think about what does our program really do, it's getting kids to realize that, but on their own. And that's really key, is to have them come to that conclusion.
Not telling them what to do. Because they're going to freaking go the other way, you guys.
That's it. You say, I mean, you know this.
If you tell me what to do, I go the other way too.
Other way. You tell them, take a shower, they're like, no.
Right.
But if they come to the conclusion on their own, it's like, oh, of course. And I think that's really at the base of everything that needs to change. And I do feel like I'm feeling a shift in the world where it's going back the other way.
I agree.
It is, right?
100%.
It's not just me because I'm doing this every day.
No.
There's something going on.
There's something going on. People are less interested.
They are.
I don't know if it's just my content.
Maybe we cut that. Yeah.
No, let's keep it. Let's keep it 100. No, I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Like, I feel overall people are waking up, I hope. And that's truly my hope for having you here, for sharing the incredible business that you and your co-founder have created, because this needs to be implemented in every school across the globe. And I think information is power. And the more that we can talk about all of these things that we're all feeling as parents or people, it's just going to, I think, create more of these connections and letting us all know that we're not alone. And it's pretty remarkable what like getting outside and going for a walk can do to maybe get out of your own way or a bad mood or something, a challenge in your life, instead of getting sucked in.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why we've created everything that's in bite-sized, digestible ways so that a parent that's dealing with 100 different things can come to us and say, what do I do today? And we're just handing people, hey, this is not a judgment. This is not you shouldn't have given your kid, like you said, you shouldn't have given your tablet. This is no, what can you do today to improve the dynamic in your family? And I think you'll see the effects snowball and domino. I think that's what's really exciting for us to see is our work in schools changes a community. Our work in households changes a neighborhood. Our work in organizations changes the families within those organizations. We do work with Major League Baseball because all their players now are struggling with media use as opposed to alcohol and drugs. And they're not sleeping and their performance is affected. And you can just see these things snowball. And it's incredible because people are so open to talking about it because they know other people are struggling with it. And so that's really, I think, at the crux of what we've tried to do and what we'll continue to do.
It's incredible. I'm so proud of you. I haven't known you that long, but I think in the short time, just now really understanding your story too, it brings so much purpose and just a greater meaning to it. And the fact that you were able to take something so horrific and turn it into, doing such good in the world is, I don't know about you, but those are the people I want to be spending my time with and sharing and, because it's what changes the world.
And I'm lucky to be surrounded by people like you who dedicate your craft to positivity. And we feel like our business actually is the platform for people like your business to actually continue to thrive so that we have healthy kids to enjoy the good content, the good things that are out there, the good messages, the good role models. We want kids following those things. We want kids connecting with their mind, their body, they're going out and enjoying. These are the things that you promote. You're not promoting bed rotting. That's a different thing. You're promoting positivity. And people like yourself should be what the algorithm is filled with for people, not the other side. And I think that's important that you continue to, it's a battle every day to keep pushing positivity to the top because it's hard and the algorithm might not recognize it every day, as you mentioned, but it's everything. It's everything because that's the stuff that people are learning from now. And having people like yourself will inspire others to create more things like that are positive forces on the world. And I mean, that's what amazes me so much about the stuff you do is it's a positive. It's just positive light that you're emitting into people. And it doesn't matter how busy you are. It's how do you figure out today? How do you get through the day? If you're having a hard day, that stuff really, I mean, I think that's why you become so popular is people can resonate with that.
Thank you. I mean, it's because it's like a personal journey of being able to share that, like we all have those days. It's not easy doing life and all of the things that come with it, and being able to find these coping mechanisms that actually help heal us and that don't hurt us in the long term it's so important. And you said something that I definitely want to mention because I think in this crazy algorithm world that we live in, it's so easy to feel like you're not important enough because what you're sharing isn't maybe getting the eyes that you want it to. And one thing I think for doing this for so many years, it's like, never forgetting what is important to you and standing behind that and staying so true to your mission and your message and not playing the algorithm game, because to me, that's a short-term
game.
Yeah, it's a short hit. And if you're really doing something or sharing something because it speaks to your soul and you want, to speak to other people, like, don't stop. I don't care if you get a view or 10 views or whatever the hell it is that we can so easily determine our worth by. It's important for me to say that because I think it's something that has at some point happened to everyone who's on social media and can so easily just make you fall into that trap of feeling like you're not it.
And if you ever question that, you can just look at your close people around you. Just look to your left and your right, not necessarily down. And I think that'll help remind you that's why I'm doing whatever I'm doing, right? I mean, you have incredible people that support you, great friends, a great family, your kids. I mean, that's what's important.
That's what's important.
That's what fulfills you, right? And the other things are amazing, of course, but those are the happiness drivers, right?
1,000,000%. Like, put your damn phone down and like enjoy this life.
Enjoy people
and get outside, go for a walk, like do the things. Like it's amazing how like bringing it back to the basics is where I think like true joy and contentment with self lives.
So true. It's really cool to hear you crystallize it like that.
This is an uncomfortable topic that I know I don't even want to think about, but unfortunately it is out there. And the rate in which, I know we were talking off camera, children are, how do I even start?
Pornography. We'll just say the word.
We're just going to say the word, okay? Because I'm like, it's like the thing you don't want to think about. But can you share some facts?
So it is difficult. I know most parents probably squirm in their seat, even just thinking about their kids.
I couldn't even start. I was like tripping over my words.
It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable because we don't think our kids would ever be watching it from such a young age or from any age. It's not something that's comfortable to think about. Our clinicians tell us some really tough stuff from their experience working with these families. And yes, some of them around social media, some of them around gaming, as I mentioned, but a lot of them are also around pornography. And what we found is the rates of watching pornography have gone up tremendously.
In kids,
really young kids.
Oh.
And not only that, but some of this is very uncomfortable, but some kids we found, especially those with ADHD, will actually have pornography up hours a day while they're doing other things. So their brain is actually wired to need that as stimulus in the background while they're doing something as traditional as homework. And that's a really hard place to start for a clinician. And, some of our clinicians have been doing this since 2009, 2008. So they've followed some of these people that have had these issues. And later what they found was that most of these people had erectile dysfunction and they had trouble having traditional sexual interactions. And
because of the expectations.
Because the expectations, which are so skewed when you start in pornography at that young of an age, which is really scary. And who knows how they get exposed to it for the first time. They see something pops up. It's scary. And it's scary that it can be going on for that long. And I'm sure it's scary as a parent.
I mean, terrifying. And you had mentioned to me too that kids are not even getting their driver's license.
Yeah. So when you look at the overall trends, kids care less about getting their driver's license. They don't get it as much. And kids also aren't having sex as much. And also drinking is down, which is interesting. I think it's less of kids going out together and doing dumb stuff like kids used to do.
Which is great.
Right? Which is great. I think there's this perception of my kids in their room so they're safe.
Right.
And I don't think that that's true when you look at all the data that we've been discussing. And pornography is one where it's so tough because most kids are not going to admit to their parent that they're watching porn in any capacity. The signs are there if they have no interest sometimes in seeing anyone or being with anyone because they feel like they're getting their fix per se. I mean, some of these kids are watching porn 30 plus times a week, which are scary. And some of those parents had no idea. And I don't say this to shock you or the audience.
No, it's important. We need to know.
It's important. And it's important to know that there's a way to get help for it. And I think when you start speaking to your kids, you may be able to tease out some of these things. It may not be immediately obvious, but you may be able to tease out some of these things if they're not letting you in their room right away. If there's certain things you may be able to tease out from your child. And the good news in all this is that there are amazing clinicians that are treating this on an everyday basis, that have spent their life and dedicated their life to treating this, whether it's pornography, whether it's gaming, whether it's what they call problematic media use disorder. Online gambling is also going to be, I mean, you're just adding an entirely new thing when, the NBA app next year is going to have gambling live bets as part of their app, and kids are going to steal their parents' credit cards inevitably. And that's a whole new front to battle on, right? And so I think it's just, again, not to panic, but to realize that this happens in some families, in some situations, and that the sooner you deal with it, the better. Because as I mentioned, when you're seeing the trajectory of some of these kids, it hurts. I mean, it hurts to watch that they can't have a normal sexual relationship with someone in their late teen years because of what was going on from the time they were 8, 9 years old and what they were seeing online. And some of those kids have gone on to the workplace, and if they haven't solved it, they're doing the same thing at work and getting caught at work. And it doesn't stop if you don't actually address the problem. And so I know that that's uncomfortable, but I think it's important to discuss with your listeners and have that be something that is on the mind of parents, as maybe this is something I can tease out if my child seems withdrawn about certain sexual topics or stuff of that nature.
I think having the uncomfortable conversations and hearing about things that are uncomfortable in the moment are the things that wake us up and the things that we need to look out for.
100%. And it's the things that parents should be doing with their kids. I know I've stressed that so much, but I think it's really everything. Because otherwise, friends aren't going to see that usually, because they're all doing their own thing. And the hard part is that none of this stuff is bringing them together even to talk about it, because they're all watching something that they're probably embarrassed to tell their friends about. If you're starting at age 8, you can imagine that as that accelerates and progresses, the things that they're watching at age 10, at age 12, at age 14, it doesn't come up for air. It goes further down. And so when you've gotten to a point where you're embarrassed to speak to your friends about it, it's really tough, because everyone's doing something different. You're just so far from each other when that's the case. And so it necessitates the importance of realizing A, there is a way to get help for kids that are having the issue, but B, also starting to figure out when there's a problem.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, how do I get this implemented into every school? We need to, what do we need to do? Seriously. Who do we need to speak to? What do we need to band together? Do we need people to sign petitions? Please.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is, if you go to our website, which is pixelhealth.io, you can fill out our contact form. You can put in if you want this for your school or for your household. And we have both options. We have resources for the household. We have options to put this into your school. And if you fill out that contact form, our team will reach out to you and start the process. And we've made it super simple and easy. You connect us with your school administrator. If it's a school, if it's your household, we work with you directly. If you need a clinician, we have that as well. And so you go to our website and fill out the form. It'll take you where you need to go. And look, there's a lot of legislation that's going on right now in this topic. And schools all around the country are suing social media companies. We have countries, and Canada just joined the suit. There's people everywhere that are working hard on, sort of giving these companies a slap on the wrist. But if you want to actually do something in your community, that's what we're here for. And so fill out our contact form. We'll reach out to you within an hour, and you can have this in your household or family tomorrow. And I think that's a great first step, which is we'll be able to tell you what your problem is. We'll be able to hand you the solution. And that way it's not so nebulous and so mystifying. We can decode all of it for you. And so start with that. Go to our website and we'll be in touch very shortly.
Amazing. It's so great. I know. I mean, I've spoken to parents who are banding together to.
It's amazing because collectively, I read an interesting study the other day that was saying kids today would actually pay for everyone in their community to get rid of their phones or social media. But if you ask them one by one, would you get rid of yours? They'll say no, because they feel trapped in this sort of collective, what they call a collective action trap. So point being is communities, as soon as you give them the opportunity to engage in this, if you give them this program, if you give them the opportunity to have these conversations, they're going to make the decisions that they want to make. And they'll feel like they're untrapped and unburdened when they realize other people don't want to be continuing to do what they're doing. And so those are the type of feelings that we can tap into to grow programs like this. And, it's the same thing that happened with sex ed a long time ago. For a long time, there was just years when we didn't want to talk about it in schools. And it was a difficult conversation. Safe sex was a difficult conversation. And now it's commonplace to understand the basics of safe sex. And I think that's the progression that we will see in schools with digital wellness. I think that's the progression we'll see in households. But we can help you frame those conversations, which I think is everything. It's not, you're not going to come and fly blind anymore. We can give you the tools to actually have that conversation. They used to call it the birds and the bees for sex ed. This is our version of the birds and the bees.
Right. It's so great. And to make the decision if you're going to have the phone and what are the boundaries around it. So we don't have to feel shame for the things,
And every kid's different and every family's different. And that's why we created the assessment tool, so that we could at least put you on some level as to maybe you don't have a problem as a family. And you can feel good about knowing that your usage is not out of control. Your kids are doing what they should be doing. And that's also a great finding too, because there's peace of mind in that.
Right.
And I think a lot of parents are craving peace of mind today. It's what are my kids doing?
Yes.
And monitoring is a key component. I think it's modeling, I think it's monitoring, and I think it's meaningful use. I think those are the three really important ones to stick to. And I think the monitoring piece is really difficult because it's, how do I see all the time when my kids are watching? It's impossible. But there are ways to set restrictions, and we think those things are important, especially for younger kids. And we have all those resources as part of our program on how do you set up your kid's device. But at the end of the day, if your child wants to find something, they will.
I know, the TV.
They will find it. They will find it. So that's why the dialogue and the openness is so important.
Thank you so much for this and for the work you're doing. It's incredible. And for such a young man like yourself, it's really beautiful to see doing and working towards really changing the way that we move through the world.
Well, thank you for having me on. This was an awesome conversation, and I hope to have more of them in the future.
Yes, everyone, Pixel Health.
Pixelhealth.io. Go and find us, and that's it.